Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Positive Girl podcast with me, Sabrina. This is the show that helps you become your best self, and today we're talking about admit when you're wrong, take responsibility when you do something wrong. Before we jump into that, as always, I want to invite you to come say hi to me on social media. I'm at Sabrina Joy Perozo on both TikTok and Instagram, so I'd love to chat and say hi to you. Also, take a look in the show notes below. You can figure out how to spell my name if you don't know how to spell Sabrina Joy Perozo, and just go look me up on socials. But also, you can take a peek at like signing up for the newsletter or checking out my website, which has had a lot of new blogs posted this month here in December of 2022. Also, it gives you an opportunity to anonymously either vent something that has been bothering you, so you can just get it off your chest and be able to move on, or submit a topic suggestion. Kind of two different things. And the last thing I want to highlight is also go ahead and if you want a great gift to give someone that does want to, better their mental health and grow in their emotional health and wellness, you can pick up a copy of the Emotions Everyday Journal, and it'll ship to you pretty quickly, and it's $32 plus $4 shipping, and it comes with stickers and in a nice box that you could just wrap up. And so that's also an option for you to purchase, because the planner journal Emotions Every Day is super easy to use, quick, efficient. It's meant for someone just wanting to get started on that journey and not have to do a lot of work. So check all of that out in the show notes below, but let's go ahead and jump right in to today's episode, which is, again, admit when you're wrong, take responsibility when you do something wrong. The perfectionist in me would often not want to admit when I was wrong, obviously, because it meant that I wasn't perfect, right? And being a perfectionist, you want to be perfect. You want those things to line up and mesh together. And I wasn't able to do everything to the highest level, and I believed that others would look down on me and no longer trust me or see value in me or even forgive me for doing something wrong. That was all the things that were like in my mind anytime I was responsible for a mistake, for a failure, for something going wrong, and I needed to fix it. I needed to deal with it and figure out, oh, now I have to tell people that I did something wrong and it's going to affect them or get in the way of the work that they need to do, whatever. So, times as a hardcore perfectionist and a people pleaser were wild, friends, wild in my mind. And I'm sure a lot of you can really connect to that, and you feel like, yes, that's exactly what I'm going through now, or what I have been through, where you create these really traumatic, drawn out stories of how people are going to react to something that you tell them and how people think about you, and you try to do mind reading and all of this stuff. It's wild times, right? So I would love to say that I am glad to have the heaviest part of that behind me, because I like to consider myself a former people pleaser, a recovering people pleaser. That's what I like to say, as well as perfectionist. I still struggle with those things. It isn't just like immediately gone forever, but I feel like I'm in recovery of those things. And I'm sure some of you out there feel that as well, But, considering all those things that you think of when you've done something wrong, or a mistake has been made, or something that you have to admit to that was your fault, it can be so overwhelming. And, I wanted to ask you though, just like, talking about that story, I'm sure maybe some people relate, but really just directly, have you ever been in a situation where you did something wrong that would affect others and you were afraid to admit that it was your fault, right? You're like, oh, do I really have to admit this? Does the truth really help all? Like, is honesty really the best policy? You're really thinking it through, like, should I actually do this? Can I get away with not doing it? Who can I pin the blame on? Like, what can we do here, right? And sometimes, like, maybe you're probably like, no, Sabrina, I would never do anything like that. Okay, sure, that's fine. And, there are definitely most times where I'm like, I would not want to do anything like that. But that isn't to say that the thoughts haven't crossed your mind. They can cross there. They can come in and out, filter in, filter out. But it's just like, you're like, man, I am fearful of telling people of what I did, especially if it affects other people. And, I think that we've all been in that spot at least once. And it could feel like you're exposed and vulnerable, and might even create some anxiety for you to have to tell people, yeah, I made a mistake. I messed up. I did this wrong. Or, yeah, I forgot to do this and now we have to do it. Surprise. And those kind of moments suck so much. Or things that I usually go through is that I will need to do a task and then I'll put it off and then it'll cost me more money to do that task because I waited so long and that sucks for the company. I like to spend more money than we had to. Ugh, what was I thinking? And I personally have felt when I've done something wrong and I have to tell people what happened, I've felt fear and I felt overwhelmed and even shame sometimes before admitting what I did wrong and apologizing for whatever happened. And I feel that shame because, again, it can sometimes reroute back to being a people pleaser and a perfectionist, regardless of whether I'm in like recovery, quote unquote, or not of those things. It's still there. Like, oh no, I can't believe it. I can't believe I did that, especially if in the place that you work, or this doesn't have to be work though, it could be in a volunteer spot, it could be even like in your family dynamic where you were supposed to do something, you were in charge of something, didn't go as planned, mistake, you know what I mean? So it's just, that shame can creep up if other people have been shamed in the past that you've seen through your experience for doing something wrong, and you're like, oh no. So you start putting that shame on yourself, or someone has put shame on you in the past, and so it's just this like automatic thing that happens for you. And so that's what happens to me though sometimes. Fear, overwhelm, sometimes shame. Before I take the time and the moment to admit what I did wrong. And a lot of those feelings, again, come from being a people pleaser and not wanting to let anyone down. I don't like letting people down. Even now recovering from being a people pleaser, it's just that now when I know that I've let someone down, it's easier for me to release that, to take a step back and be like, you know what? I did let them down. They're going to feel however way about that. I cannot control that, but I feel better admitting what happened, and I'm just going to have to move on. There's nothing I can do. Punishing myself will not change anything. And hopefully that helps someone out there that's thinking that same thing, not wanting to let people down, but we're going to let people down. It's just, we're not perfect beings. But, also hating the feeling or not doing everything so perfectly, or at least good enough to get by, right? A lot of these feelings of just like feeling like crap about making a mistake and doing something wrong. We want to do everything so perfect. We want to, or that's why I even threw in at least good enough to get by. You want to like at least just like do a good enough job. And sometimes we can't even do that just because things happen and mistakes and failures are part of life. Part of life. If you're not new here, you know that I talk about it all of the time because it's important. And when something doesn't go the way we planned, either due to something incorrectly, like we did something incorrectly, or there was like a lack of attention to what we were doing. So something happened and we weren't paying attention. We're like, crap, that happened. It's never a situation that we celebrate, obviously. We're not like, yeah, despite how much I talk about how mistakes and failures are like so fantastic, no one's out here celebrating. I'm not like, yeah, I made another mistake, cost the company more money. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Can't wait to find out what I learned about this. What can I learn from this experience? Like, no one is excited about that. I think there are people in life that are excited when they experience mistakes and failures, but I think it has to be like very specific, isolated incidences where it's okay to be like, it's fine. I mean, it is fine to make mistakes and failures, but it's like, it's fine in that environment that doesn't really maybe affect that many people. And that's what they were going for. What mistakes and failures can we make so we can continue to build upon this and make it better, whatever it is, right? But generally, it's not a situation that we celebrate. We often will like mourn, like after we do something wrong or make a mistake or whatever, we will often mourn all the times before that time that it went so well, that there were no problems, Smooth sailing, easy breezy, lemon squeezy. Like it was so good. And then we will also dread having to tell anyone about what happened, right? We're just like, I don't really want to do this. I am dreading this moment. Underwritten 10%. I don't want to tell anyone. So it's like you're mourning and you're dreading all at the same time. And one of the reasons could be not knowing how other people are going to react to the news, right? You could have this heavy dread and fear because you're like, crap, am I going to lose my job? Is someone going to yell at me? Am I going to get this opportunity taken away from? If I accidentally sent, you know, peanut butter in my son's lunch, even though this school is supposed to be peanut butter free, are they going to kick my kid out, right? If I accidentally called someone like something that I didn't realize was, naively like obnoxious or inappropriate or something, like are they going to be upset at me forever? You know? It's like we don't know the consequences. It's even worse. It's even worse. Like we don't know how they're going to react. We don't know. We don't know. And again, we could also be fearful of the consequences, especially if we know them. If we know them, we're like, okay, we can still be fearful of them, but we're at least like, well, here are one of 6 things that could happen today. And if we don't know the consequences, it could incite even more anxiety and fear because we're like, crap, what could happen? Again, what could happen? What's the worst that could happen? Let's times it by 10. Let's worry about these things. And the more we think about and worry about it, the worse we feel. Obviously, the equation's easy. Think about it more, worry about it more, feel worse. Yet, in the moment, we continue to push ourselves to think about it and obsess about it. When I think consciously, we know that we need to stop. We just need to take a break. But we can't because we're so obsessed with the fear of why can't I just know what's going to happen before it happens? So that we don't have to experience this fear and anxiety. But the tricky part is that you may not realize that you still don't have to experience those things if you don't want to. If you change your mind, you're like, well, this happened. Whatever happens next, still out of my control. I'm going to try to have the most neutral or positive attitude I can have. Not worry about it. Go about my life until that feedback comes, until those consequences come. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's just so interesting. And even with those feelings of fear of the outcome, how they're gonna react and consequences and stuff like that, some people will still not tell anyone what happened until the last possible second. That you have to let them know that, hey, this didn't work. I accidentally sent 100 orders to the wrong people. Oh, I did send peanut butter in my son's lunch, who is best friends with the kid that has the peanut allergy. That's not a real example from my life, just so you know, because I have a daughter and not a son and only one child. And I'm just bringing it up because it was an issue years ago in a different setting with not a child. Anyway, it's a good example. It's a good example to bring up for this. But you know what I mean? It's you will wait till the last moment that you have to tell them. And then you're just really pushing yourself to feel all this pain and worry more and longer than you would have to. It's like torturing yourself. Why? You are torturing yourself on purpose. But regardless of all that and how long we wait to tell people and how we feel leading up to that and any sort of shame or internal emotions that we have about the whole situation, the best thing we can do when we've made a mistake, we've done something wrong, is to just admit that we did something wrong and then move forward. Because I've said many times, staying stuck where you are right now is not going to fix anything. It's happened. The thing has happened. We do not have time machines. We cannot turn it back around and undo it. It has happened. So you have to move forward. And moving forward doesn't mean that you're going to forget what happened, or you are like not going to care about what happened, that you're not going to try to learn from the situation, that you're not going to still, be held responsible for what happened and have to deal with consequences and whatever else. It just means that you are not going to allow yourself to stay stuck in this one problem that you're experiencing. You're going to allow yourself to move forward and grow from it and learn from it, and not let that thing hold you captive. You're going to keep going with your life. Just because you accidentally spent more company money than you were supposed to. Yeah, that sucks. Shouldn't have done it. Whatever's going to happen will happen. But you have to keep moving forward. You can't just wallow in the pity of oh my gosh, I can't believe I did this. Be like, you know what? I did this. It sucks. I'm going to try really hard to never let this happen again. Let's move forward. Let's move forward. Okay? It's so important. Again, despite whatever happens, even the worst possible outcome, maybe you got fired from your job, you have to move forward. You have to. Can't let yourself get stuck, held captive. Nothing will get better. You will learn nothing. It'll all be for nothing, to be honest. Okay? You have to move forward. And so the situation can be resolved, if necessary, from the error that occurred. Got to move forward. Okay? Okay. So I know, again, coming back to something that I say all the time. I know I say this all the time, but it really applies here to what I'm talking about. I've already mentioned it a couple times. And if you are not new here, say it with me. Mistakes and failures are life's best learning lessons. Okay? Mistakes and failures are life's best learning lessons. They are. They absolutely are, right? We don't need to cower in the face of mistakes and failures and those moments when we do something wrong. We don't. We do, but we don't have to, and we shouldn't. And we should try to be cognizant of when we do start to do that, pull ourselves back, shake ourselves up, and be like, no, we do not have to do this. We need to take the most we can from those experiences and learn all we can. All we can, right? It will help us to do better in the future, to understand what went wrong now, and to be prepared for something similar down the line. It will offer you so much education. So think of it in that way. It's hard to do that in the moment we make a mistake. To find any sort of positive way to identify it, but you gotta try, okay? And again, I know it's not fun in the moment, It really sucks so much. So much. But these experiences are necessary to become our best selves, which is what we're trying to do every single day. And just so you know, no one gets away with not doing something wrong. They may say that they've never done anything wrong, or they'll try to play off something that would normally be classified as wrong, but they're like, oh no, it wasn't wrong because of all of these made up things I'm about to tell you. It's not, okay? No one gets away with not doing anything wrong. Everyone has done something wrong. You will do something wrong again, and we'll continue to learn from it because we are not perfect beings. So, in addition to admitting when you're wrong and taking that responsibility on, here are a few more things to remember in regards to admitting fault and taking responsibility, because, again, we just need to own up to what we did wrong, and we don't have to live in that fear, that worry, that shame, that guilt. We don't have to live there, take up residence there, start ordering food to there. We can live outside of that. We can grow from that. We can use that as a stepping stone to the next thing in our lives, right? And so in addition to knowing that, I just wanted to share 5 things with you that are very much related as things that we should stay away from in regards to admitting and taking responsibility for things we do wrong. But as always, before I share these tips and advice with you, this is all based on my own knowledge and research and experience and the experiences of others that I am allowed to share. And, If you feel like you do not align with what I'm saying or what I'm about to say, I encourage you to seek a counselor or a therapist and kind of have that one-on-one time to figure out what would actually align with you and help you on your journey of admitting wrong and taking responsibility for your actions. Okay? Or if you don't want to do that, you could also just go online to our best friend, Google, and type in like how to admit when you're wrong, how to take responsibility for your actions, things like that. Lots of articles, lots of blogs, lots of knowledge and research, book suggestions for you to read and figure out the best case tips for you. Okay? So again, five things to talk about in regards to admitting fault and taking responsibility. Number one, don't take responsibility for things that aren't your fault or that you weren't a part of. Don't take responsibility for things that aren't your fault or that you weren't a part of. Why are you doing this? Why are you taking responsibility for things that were not your fault? I understand. People pleasing things. Yes. Yes. But no. We need to not do that. I know that was cheesy. But we need to not do that. We need to realize that if it's not our fault, why I wish you could like see what I'm doing right now. Why? This is why I need to get my act together about the video podcast and have them come out on the same day so you can see what I'm doing. Why are you admitting fault on someone else's behalf? Maybe you weren't even there and you're like, yeah, it was me. I did it. I'll take the blame. Why are you like being that kind of victim of like, or not victim, like the martyr, excuse me, not victim. I was like, no, that's not the right word. Why are you being a martyr for them? No. Don't think you're going to come in and save the day or that's going to like be beneficial to you sometime down the road. No, because how are they supposed to learn from this experience if you are taking fault? Taking responsibility for something that you weren't even a part of. No. Don't do it. Number two, that leads immediately into what we just talked about, is don't take responsibility for things on someone else's behalf because you want to protect them or don't want them to feel bad. Maybe one of your reasons from number one that you're taking responsibility for things that aren't your fault is because you're taking responsibility for things on someone else's behalf to protect them, or they tell you need to take the fall for them so they could stay out of trouble. Red flags everywhere. Or you don't want them to feel bad. You're really codependent and you're like, okay, I'll take the blame for you. It's okay. It'll be fine. Why are we doing this? It's like so ridiculous. Don't take the blame. Don't take responsibility for things on someone else's behalf. Even if they tell you that you shouldn't, because it's their lessons to learn. It's their burden to bear. You don't need that extra crap on you. Absolutely not. No, you don't. I'm telling you, you don't. So don't take responsibility for someone else's actions. They're going to feel bad. They need to experience pain. They need to deal with what they did. They will never learn fully from this experience if they do not take responsibility. They just won't, right? And so you're thinking, oh, this just is one time that they'll do it. No, because they got away with it. So now they're like, oh, I can do it again. And this person's probably going to like come back in, save the day. We're going to replay this video again and again. And yes, the story might change. The things they do wrong might change. But it'll always be the same plot, and you know it. So, don't take responsibility for things on someone else's behalf because you want to protect them or you don't want them to feel bad. Protect them. Protect them from what? From getting in trouble, facing consequences, repercussions? No, they need those. Number three, don't blame other people. Now, this one and the next two are just very classic things that we do not want to do when we do need to take responsibility and admit what we have done wrong. Okay? Don't blame other people. Why are you pushing the blame off onto someone else? What is that going to do? Right? You're like, oh, Sabrina, it's going to make it so I don't have to take responsibility. I'm not going to get in trouble. I can just push it off to someone else. Okay, great. Well, Aren't you gonna feel bad if that person gets fired instead of you? And you're like, no, because I didn't get fired. It's like, ooh, I do hope your guilt just like eats you up at some point because that is so shady, so terrible. Don't blame other people. Don't push off your responsibility and that burden to someone else. How is that fair? How is that necessary? And one day you'll get caught and it'll be even worse. Let's not forget about that. So don't blame other people. Just take responsibility, take the pain that is yours, deal with it, and move on. Number 4, don't come up with excuses. I think this is like the most common thing that happens. Not necessarily pushing off the blame onto other people, that happens, of course, but coming up with excuses because a lot of people feel like their excuses are actually reasons and they are wrong. They are delusional, unfortunately. It's like your manager being like, why didn't you get this project done? You're like, oh, because I had so many other things to do. I was just so busy. And they're like, okay, well, what did you do? And it's like, oh, well, I had to do this other big project and these 2 side projects. And this other person kept talking to me all the time and I had to help them with their projects and all of this junk. You're making excuses. You're like, oh, I had so much work to do, so I couldn't do this thing, even though you told me it's really important. I should do it first, right? You know, it's like, okay, well, if you're at work and you don't notice that someone got hurt, even though it's your job to kind of be like monitoring, securing the situation, the area, and the person's like, why didn't, why weren't you there to, call out safety things so this person wouldn't get hurt? And you want to be like, oh, well, I only looked away for a second, or hey, they did it and it was like out of my line of sight, or I told them not to and they did it anyway, like all kinds of crap where you're just like, well, I did what I was supposed to do. I tried to do what I was supposed to do, but I couldn't for whatever made up excuse. Excuses are not reasons, okay? Reasons are real things that happen. Like, hey, why were you late to work? Oh, because someone got in a car accident with me on the way to work. That's why I was late. The other one would be like an excuse of like, okay, why were you late to work? And it's just like, oh, because I didn't know that there was gonna be traffic, and so I had to sit in traffic for a long time. That's like an excuse because those things are, seeing if there's traffic, it's kind of like a responsibility of being on your way to work to see, like, oh, do I need to leave earlier this day? That's actually something that I did have to do a long time when I worked across the bridge because I live like basically in the metro area of Portland, but on the Washington side. But I worked in Portland, and so I had to check the traffic every morning at a certain time to determine whether I could leave at my normal time or if I had to leave like an extra 15 minutes early so I wouldn't get caught in traffic trying to get to work on time because it was very important that I get to work on time. Like at that job, it was very, 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 very important. More important than a lot of other jobs. But anyway, don't come up with excuses. Don't be like, oh, I didn't know. A lot of times people will be like, oh, why didn't you get this done? We needed you to get it done. You're like, oh, I didn't know how to do it, or I didn't know who to ask, or I didn't know I was supposed to do it, or no one told me I was assigned to me. That's an excuse. That's an excuse. Like, you could have very easily asked someone something to point you in the right direction, right? So don't come up with excuses. Number 5, and the last one I want to share with you in regards to your taking responsibility and admitting when you do something wrong is don't falsify what happened. Falsifying, telling lies can also, feed into the other two of like coming up with excuses and pairing that with a lie, or blaming other people and lying that it was actually them and that they had all the responsibility and it was not you at all whatsoever, right? Don't falsify what happened. Don't make up lies. Don't just be like, oh, well, I wasn't told that I had to do this, that, and the other. Or I didn't know what I was doing. Or this person distracted me and that's why this happened, right? It's just so tough. It's hard and it takes so much strength and courage and you got to do it. You got to admit that when you're wrong. You have to. Take your consequences and your repercussions, become stronger, and move forward. Okay? There's just no other way. There's not. There's not. If you feel like someone else needs to listen to this, I encourage you to share it with them. It can be really helpful, especially during seasons of life where you are going through a lot and you do feel like everything is like your fault and you don't want to take on any more blame because you feel like you've taken enough. You want to like shoulder that to someone else, but no, you gotta keep it on yourself. It's not a present. It's not a gift to share. So, but that's all I have to share with you in regards to like admitting when you're wrong and taking responsibility on that. So, thank you so much for listening to the Real Positive Girl podcast again with me, Sabrina. I do appreciate every time that you listen, download, share the show. You guys are absolutely amazing. Don't forget to check the show notes below and come say hi to me on social media. Sign up for all the things. Submit a topic suggestion. Please do. Maybe buy the journal planner. That'd be awesome as well. But again, thank you for listening. And until next time, have a good one. And I will see y'all next time. Bye, everyone.